Hey guys, I'm Mr. Hark. Tonight's story is one of the darkest Bigfoot encounters I've ever come across. We're not talking about footprints or something running across a road. This is about a girl who secretly raised a wounded young Bigfoot in the woods of Washington, and years later, watched that same creature come home covered in blood after killing two men who'd murdered his parents. And the worst part? He left a message on her kitchen table, written in his own blood. I won't spoil anything else. Just listen all the way through and decide for yourself if this was a monster or something a lot closer to us than we want to admit. But before we start, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who still doesn't believe in Bigfoot. It really helps the channel out. Alright, let's begin. The part people never believe is the note. They'll accept the dead men. They'll nod when I say 2 hunters were killed up there that night. They'll even lean in when I talk about something in the trees, something that isn't supposed to exist. But when I get to him dragging himself to my kitchen table, half-conscious and leaking blood, and writing a message with his fingers dipped in it like ink, that's where they look at me different. Like I crossed some line between a weird story and something that means I might be sick in the head. So I'll start there, because that's the thing I can't get out of my mind. Him hunched over the table, shaking so bad the chair legs tapped the floor, his fur clumped with blood and rainwater. He reached for the paper with those big hands that never fit right around anything meant for a person, and he wrote 4 letters, slow and stubborn, like every stroke of the pen was a promise. I, then a space, then what looked like R, V, N, and G. I-R-V-N, that's how it looked on the page. Like a child trying to spell revenge. 2 weeks later, he was dead and the paper was buried with him. The only proof I ever had that I had raised someone who remembered everything and used that memory to kill. I swear to you this is true. You don't have to believe me. But I'm going to tell you how it happened, and you can decide what makes more sense. That I'm making this up, or that the world is stranger than you want it to be. My name is Emily. I was a forest kid, I guess you'd call it. When all this started, I was 16 and living in an old cabin at the end of a gravel road in western Washington with my dad. He was a retired paramedic, one of those guys who had spent too many years watching people bleed out in the back of an ambulance on city streets. When my mom left, he moved us to the woods and never really looked back. He liked the quiet. He liked that nobody came by without him hearing their truck on the road 5 minutes before. If you picture some cute little vacation cabin, that's not it. This place was small and old and kind of leaning into the trees. 1 bedroom for him, 1 for me. Wood stove that made the place smell like smoke half the winter. Pantry with a weird crawl space behind it. An outhouse for the first few years until he finally fixed the plumbing. The town was about a 30-minute drive. Couple of stores, a diner, a bar, hardware store. People knew us as the ones who liked it quiet. That was fine by us. We kept to ourselves and they let us. We had 3 house rules that I remember my dad laying out clear when I was maybe 10, even before any of this started. Curtains closed on the forest side after dark. No porch light left on all night. And if a truck came up our road that we weren't expecting, I was to get away from the windows and wait for him to check who it was. At the time, I thought he was just being paranoid. Later, I understood he was getting ready for something he couldn't even name yet. You hear stuff in towns like that. Stories. At the diner, over coffee, or late at night in the bar parking lot, most of it is just guys trying to top each other. One man swears he saw a cougar take a deer down. Another says his granddad saw lights over the ridge. That kind of thing. But there were Bigfoot stories too. Always told with a half smile. Like they wanted to be taken seriously, but not so seriously that people would laugh in their face. My dad didn't join in those talks, he just listened. Later, when it was just us in the truck, he'd say, "Most people don't know what a body looks like after a cougar gets it, or bears don't do that, not the way they're describing." I'd ask what he meant, and he'd just shake his head. People see what they can live with, leave it at that. I remember thinking that was a weird way to put it. But at 16, I was more interested in getting phone service to work long enough to text someone back, or how I looked the one day a week I went into town, than in old stories. If the woods felt creepy sometimes, I blamed it on the fog and the way the trees crowded in on the road at night. When you live in it, it just becomes your normal, until the crying. I still hear it sometimes when it's really quiet. That night's sound? I thought at first it was a kid. It was late fall, one of those evenings where the fog starts low, sitting in the dips of the land, and the trees drip on you long after the rain actually stopped. Dad was at the kitchen table paying bills, and I had my headphones in, pretending to do homework. Power flickered once, then came back. Somewhere off to the east, maybe near the old cave system we'd always been warned about, I heard it. Thin and high and just wrong for that time of night. Not a coyote, not an owl. It had that hitch in it you hear when a little kid is trying not to sob. I pulled my headphones off and my dad looked up at the same time. We just stared at each other for a second. "You hear that?" I asked. He waited, held his hand up. The sound came again, a little louder. Then it broke off like someone slapped a hand over a mouth. He frowned. "Probably a calf," he said, which made no sense. "Nobody kept cows that far up in the trees." "Stay inside." He grabbed a flashlight and his old paramedic bag and went to the door. That bag sat in the corner most days, like some leftover from a past life. I'd seen him use it on neighbors a couple of times when there was an accident, but never for us. "I'm coming with you," I said, already moving. "Emily." No, it wasn't a shout. It was that low voice he used when he was serious. I stopped, but I watched him go down off the porch. The night swallowed him fast. The beam of his flashlight showed the driveway, the edge of the trees, stopped at the fog. The crying started again, further away. It sounded hurt, desperate. He hesitated, then kept walking. I lost sight of him after maybe 20 seconds. You know that feeling when you're watching someone walk into something that feels wrong and you can't explain why? Like your body knows before your brain catches up? I had that. My legs started moving before I decided anything. I grabbed a second flashlight from the drawer and slipped out the back door, the one that opened toward the forest. I knew he'd be mad, but I also knew if there really was some kid out there, he'd need me. That's how I justified it anyway. I cut across the yard toward the sound. The cave had always been one of those off-limits places, not because of ghosts or monsters or anything like that. Because of rocks, my dad said. Loose ones, drops, sinkholes. You fall in, I might not hear you. I might not reach you. So you stay away. That night, the crying was coming from that direction, not right at the mouth, but somewhere in the woods near it. I knew that even as I pretended I was just going for a look. The ground was slick, wet ferns slapped at my jeans. Every branch I pushed aside flicked water in my face. The beam of my flashlight wasn't very good, so I moved slowly, picking out stumps and holes as I went. The sound kept stopping and starting. Every time it stopped, the forest went too quiet. I could hear my own breathing loud in my ears. Then it would come again, just off to my left, or a little uphill. It felt like I was being led. I wasn't thinking monster. I wasn't thinking Bigfoot. I was thinking, maybe stupidly, what if someone dumped a baby animal, or if some kid wandered off from a campsite? Things like that, things my brain could live with. The closer I got to the cave, the more the air felt heavy. Not colder exactly, just thicker. My flashlight hit rock, then ferns again, then what looked like a blackberry tangle. The crying cut off. I heard something shift in the brush right in front of me. "Hello," I said, because that's what you say apparently when you're 16 and not as smart as you think you are. Nothing answered. Just breathing. Fast, panicked breathing. Not mine. I pushed the ferns aside. For a second, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. There was hair. Dark, matted, clumped with mud and something darker. A shape kind of curled up on itself, wedged between a fallen log and the base of a tree. Two eyes staring at me, too big for the head they were in. It was small. That's the first clear thing in my memory. Small, maybe 3 or 4 feet. That's shorter than me, shorter than my dad's workbench. Small enough for my brain to decide baby. The rest of it didn't match. The shoulders were too wide. The hands were wrong. The smell hit me then, like wet dog and earth and that metal scent you get when you cut yourself deep. It bared its teeth but didn't growl, just pressed back harder into the dirt like it wanted to disappear. I didn't scream. I should have. Instead, I did that dumb human thing and whispered, "It's okay, I'm not gonna hurt you," which, looking back, was a lie. Not because I meant it that way, but because everything I did from that point on led to somebody getting hurt. I don't know how long I stayed there, crouched in the ferns, talking softly to this thing that wasn't a kid and wasn't a bear and wasn't anything I had a word for. My legs went numb. My flashlight started to dim. Once, way off, I heard my dad calling my name, angry and scared, the little boy. I think of him as a boy. He watched me the whole time, eyes flicking to my hands when I moved them back to my face. If I shifted too fast, he flinched. I saw blood on his upper arm, thick and dark, some on his side, not oozing fresh, but not old either. The hair around it clumped together like it does when you rinse out a cut and never dry it properly. I went to reach out once. He made this noise low in his throat like a warning and drew back. So I stopped. I just stayed there, talking about nothing. About school, the rain, my idiot classmate who drove his truck into a ditch. I don't know why. I guess I wanted him to get used to my voice. My dad found me like that. I heard him crashing through the brush, muttering under his breath. His flashlight beam swept over us and stopped. He froze. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped. And then he saw what I was looking at. I heard it in the way his breath caught. He lifted the light higher, taking in the size, the shape, the wet fur, the eyes. For a heartbeat, all three of us were just stuck. Me, my dad, and this shaking little thing in the brush. "Emily," my dad said very quietly. "Come here, slowly." "He's hurt," I said. My voice sounded weird, like it was coming from somewhere else. "Dad, he's bleeding. He didn't tell me I was crazy. He didn't tell me it was a bear. He didn't say any of the things you'd expect. He just swallowed and said, 'We need to go now, back to the house.'" The boy must have understood something in my face because he made a sound. Not like an animal, more like a question. He lifted one hand, just a little, and then pulled it back against his chest. I stood up slowly. "I'll come back," I heard myself say. "I promise." We walked away. I kept turning to look. My dad grabbed my arm once and squeezed hard enough to make my eyes water. Back at the cabin, he shut the door, locked it, pulled the curtains. His hands were shaking. I'd only seen that once before, after he came back from helping with a rollover accident on the highway. "What was that?" I asked. He leaned on the counter, staring at nothing. "You tell me," he said. "You're the one who got a good look." I opened my mouth and this word came out that I didn't even mean to say. "Bigfoot," I whispered. He flinched a little. Then he did something that kept me from dismissing all of this later as a dream. He went to the drawer, pulled out a bottle of whiskey he kept for emergencies, and took a long pull straight from it. My dad never did that. So you can call me gullible, you can say I was a kid, but I wasn't the only one who saw something they couldn't fit into the normal world that night. I went back the next day. He told me not to. Of course he did. We argued at the kitchen table, voices low but sharp. He said words like dangerous, and we don't know what it is, and you could end up like those bodies I saw in the city when things went bad. I said words like hurt and alone, and if we don't help, what does that make us? Finally, he did the thing he always did when he knew he wasn't going to win. He went quiet, rubbed his eyes, and said, "If you're going, you're not going alone, and you're not going without this." This was his trauma bag. We found the boy not far from where he'd been, a little deeper into the brush, like he'd tried to move and didn't get very far. His eyes went wide when he saw us. He tried to get up, but when he put weight on his right leg, it buckled, and he let out this breathless sound, more pain than anything else. "Easy, easy," my dad murmured, same voice he used on people bleeding on stretchers. "We're not going to hurt you. We're not." He set the bag down slowly, making sure the boy saw every motion. I stayed where I was, talking, softly. I don't remember what I said. It was like how you talk to a scared dog. The words don't matter as much as the tone. We never cut the hair fully away from the wounds. He wouldn't let us, but we could see enough to know they were gunshots. One in the upper arm, graze or through and through. One in the fleshy part of his side. Not fresh, a day old at least, already starting to look angry around the edges. My dad cleaned what he could with saline and gauze. The boy shook and whimpered but didn't lash out. He watched every move. When my dad pulled the first soaked pad away and the air hit the raw flesh, he made this strangled sound and grabbed my wrist. His hand swallowed my arm, even as a child. The grip didn't hurt. It just said, "Don't leave." "It's okay," I told him. "We're helping." When we left, he tried to follow, dragging his leg. He made it a few feet before collapsing. We had a fight about it right there in the trees. I wanted to bring him in. My dad said absolutely not. We don't know what sickness he has. We don't know what he eats. We don't know anything. The boy made that sound again, low and desperate. I looked at him and it felt like looking at a kid left on the side of the road. That was the moment everything turned. Not the note, not the killings. That 1 second, staring down at him and choosing to be responsible for him. Then we come back, I said. We bring food. Blankets. We can't just leave him. My dad stared at me. I think some part of him already knew where this would end, but he had spent his adult life trying not to leave people helpless. It was built into him. He gave this tiny nod. We come back, he said, but we do it on our terms. It didn't happen overnight. There was no magic bond where suddenly this wild thing trusted us. It took weeks. We started with food, apples, bread, leftover meat. We'd leave it on a flat rock a little ways from his hiding spot and then step back. First few days we'd find it gone when we came back. Then we started catching glimpses of him moving, hunched low, grabbing what we left. He watched us, constantly. Those eyes felt too human sometimes, the way they followed my hands. We brought blankets and an old sleeping bag. He dragged them back into whatever hollow he was using. My dad kept checking the wounds, watching for infection. He said very little, but I could tell they bothered him. The direction, the size, the way the tissue looked. Rifle shots, he finally admitted. Not some accident. He tried drawing once to explain. Picked up a stick and scratched in the dirt. Triangle shapes, then round ones. He got frustrated fast. Threw the stick away. I picked it up. Here, I said, and drew a little stick figure. Me. Then one taller with a square for my dad's shoulders. Then him, smaller but with extra lines for arms and hair. He stared, then made this sound that was almost a laugh. He pointed at the smallest figure, then at his own chest. He understood. From there, it went fast. He learned to draw, fast, like it was something already inside him, just waiting for someone to hand him the right tool. We gave him paper, pencils. I showed him letters, because that's what you do with kids, right? A, B, C, like in the books. He watched, blinked slow, then took the pencil and copied the entire page. Not just the letters I'd shown him, all of it. It was almost perfect. The shapes, the spacing, the line breaks. Like a photocopy done by hand. I thought it was a fluke. I turned the page, pointed to a paragraph, read it out loud. He listened, then repeated it back to me, word for word. Even the ums and likes. It was strange, beautiful and unsettling at the same time. Like watching a camera in a brain. He started drawing more on his own. Animals, trees, then faces. One day he handed me a page with 3 men's faces on it. Not cartoons, not vague shapes. Real men, as detailed as if he'd traced a photograph. One with a crescent-shaped scar on his chin. One with a nose that bent off to the left. One with a baseball cap and a keychain hanging from his belt loop. My stomach flipped when I saw those. There was something in the way he pressed the pencil into the paper around their eyes, dark and heavy, that made me feel sick. He tapped each face in turn, then jabbed his finger toward the direction of the cave. His breath picked up. He made a little motion with his hands, like holding a long stick. Pushed one hand forward. Bang, bang. He didn't know that word, but I've heard enough stories about gunshots. I knew what he meant. Hunters, I said. Men with guns? He nodded. Over and over. Then he did something I still see in my sleep sometimes. He spread his hands like he was grabbing something soft, brought them together fast, then jerked them away, fingers clawed, like struggling. His face twisted in this soundless cry. Then he dropped his hands and just wilted. He curled into himself, making a little rocking motion. Both hands went from his forehead to his chest. Forehead, chest, his parents, my dad said quietly behind me. I'd forgotten he was there. They pushed him into the brush, told him to stay down. That's the gesture. Remember us, stay in here. He tapped his own forehead and chest, mirroring it. The boy looked up. The moment he saw that, he reached out and grabbed my dad's wrist, eyes wide. Nodded hard, like, yes, yes, you get it, thank you. I can't describe that look. Relief and grief and surprise that someone finally understood. That was when I stopped thinking of him as an it. He was a person, not human maybe, but a person, which made what happened later so much worse. We couldn't keep him in the woods forever. The winter was bad that year. Heavy snow, long freeze, then rain that turned the ground to soup. We kept finding him closer and closer to the cabin, At some point, my dad just threw his hands up. "If we're going to do this, we do it right," he said. "He needs shelter. And if anyone ever comes up here, we need a plan." The crawl space behind the pantry became his first hiding place. It was a cramped, half-rotten gap between the floor and the slope of the hill, reachable by squeezing behind shelves stacked with canned food. My dad knocked out some boards, reinforced others, made a little hollow just big enough for a small body to curl in. By then, the boy was growing fast, faster than I expected. Each month, he seemed taller, broader in the shoulders. His head almost brushed the pantry ceiling by the time he first slept inside. We'd bring him in after dark, feed him, let him sit at the table with us, though he hunched low and never looked at the windows. He loved the wood stove, would sit as close as he could, eyes half closed, letting the heat soak into his fur. My dad set rules. Curtains closed on the forest side, always. No lights on late if we could help it. If a truck came up the road and it wasn't us or one of the two neighbors we trusted, he went into the crawl space and stayed there until we pulled him out. I didn't like the crawl space. It felt too much like a cage. But he accepted it. Maybe he understood the need for hiding better than either of us. We never gave him a proper name, not at first. We had sounds we used. Little clicks, whistles, nicknames. Over time, he started trying to say Emmy for me. It came out rough, but it was close enough. He called my dad something that sounded like Da. Funny thing, he could read better than he could talk. He'd sit with children's books I'd had when I was little, flipping pages, then reciting the whole thing in this low voice. If you walked into the room, it sounded like the book was reading itself. He would pause sometimes and tap a word, frown, then look at me. I'd say it. He'd repeat it once, and that was it. Locked in. He carried the faces of those three men with him the same way. Locked in. As he got older, he drew them less often. But when he was upset, when thunder rolled over the hills or a truck backfired on the road, he'd pull out paper and do it again. Same scar. Same nose. Same cap. Over and over, like scratching at an old wound. I told myself he was just processing the trauma. That's what they say, right? You have to let kids talk or draw it out. I never asked what he would do if he saw them again. That was my mistake. The first time he stepped out of the tree line to watch me in town, I almost had a heart attack. I was in my early 20s by then, still living at the cabin, helping my dad, working odd jobs in town. Grocery store, sometimes the diner. Nothing fancy. It was easier than trying to explain our situation to anyone. We did what we always did. Parked at the grocery. My dad went to the feed store. I went in to get supplies. He followed us in the truck, but once we parked, he climbed out and melted into the tree line that ran behind the back lot. He liked doing that, standing right where the forest started, just past the last row of cars, watching people without being seen. Sometimes, if it was late and the lot was emptying out, he'd step a little closer to see the lights. That day, it was one of those washed-out gray afternoons, sky low, like the clouds had sunk down to sit on the hills. The town was quiet. Hunting season was coming up, so there were more trucks than usual, guns in rear windows, men in camo buying coffee and ammo. I remember standing in line with a basket full of canned soup, pasta, coffee, antibiotics my dad had convinced the pharmacist to refill. Just another boring day. Then I heard it, a whistle outside. 2 sharp notes, then a pause, then another. I'd heard that exact pattern before. Years ago, in a different part of the forest, when I was crouched in ferns with a terrified kid at my feet. I froze. Blood went out of my hands. I set the basket down before I dropped it and walked to the front window. People grumbled when I cut out of line. I didn't care. Across the street, 3 men were leaning against a truck. I knew them before I really saw them. It's hard to explain. My brain filled in the details from those drawings before my eyes caught up. Scar under the chin, pale line pulling the skin a little tight. Nose bent to the left, like it had been broken and never set right. Baseball cap, same brand, same bent brim. A cheap metal keychain hanging off a belt loop, little shade dangling, catching the light when he moved. They were laughing. One of them did the whistle again, like he was calling a dog's attention. They were talking loud enough that bits carried across the street when the door opened. "Remember that damn bear story?" one said. Nobody believed a word of it. "Should have filmed the damn thing. Once in a lifetime, man," another replied. "Collector still owes us for that. We brought proof." We brought scars. They laughed. The sound made my skin crawl. I stepped back from the glass because I had this sudden, sick thought. If I could see them from here, then someone else could too. I ran to the back of the store, out the side door, around the building. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I hit the tree line and kept going until the noise of town dulled. "Hey," I hissed. "Hey, where are you?" He was there, between two fir trees, half hidden. He had grown into something that, if you saw it for the first time, would make your knees go out from under you. He was taller than the doorway at home, broad enough that if he stood in front of a normal person, they'd vanish behind him. Right then, though, he looked small. His shoulders were pulled up around his neck. His eyes were fixed on the street. His hands were clenched so tight I could see the dark nails digging into his own palms. He heard me but didn't look away. I stepped closer, grabbed his forearm. His whole body was vibrating. I could feel the tension like electricity under skin. "Don't," I whispered. "You can't. You hear me? You can't go over there." He made a sound low in his chest, not quite a word, but I recognized the shape of it. He remembered my dad telling him years ago that those wounds were from guns, that men had done that to him, that the faces he drew were real. His gaze never left the truck. One of the men lit a cigarette. The smell drifted just a hint on the damp air. I felt him stiffen under my hand. His lips moved, like he was reading something only he could see. Then he reached up and made that gesture slowly, almost without meaning to. Forehead, chest. "Please," I said. "Not here. Not now. They'll kill you. And then they'll come for us. Just please." I don't know if he understood the words. Maybe it was my tone. Maybe it was the fact that my nails were digging into his arm the way his had dug into mine years ago. Whatever it was, he didn't move. The men finished their cigarettes, stomped them out, and drove away. He watched until the truck taillights vanished. Only then did he turn his head and look at me. The expression on his face scared me more than anything I'd seen in the woods. Not rage, not wild animal fury, something quieter, like a decision. He let me lead him back along the tree line. He waited there while I finished shopping. He came home in the truck, silent, pressing himself against the back of the cab where nobody could see him through the rear window. That night, he didn't sit by the stove. He went to the table, pulled out paper and a pencil, and started drawing. He drew the three men, scar, nose, cap, over and over, until the faces blurred together. When he filled one page, he grabbed another. His hands moved faster, rougher. Lines got heavier, almost tearing the paper. I watched him, sick to my stomach. "Dad," I whispered. "What do we do?" My dad stood in the doorway, arms crossed, staring like he was looking at a bomb nobody knew how to defuse. "We wait," he said finally. "We watch him, and we make sure he doesn't go anywhere alone." That was the plan. It lasted all 2 days. I should have known something was wrong that evening. Little things. He was quiet. Quieter than usual, I mean. He stayed outside most of the day, just beyond the tree line where he liked to move, pacing a path between the cabin and the deeper woods. When I tried to bring him in for dinner, he didn't meet my eyes. He made the forehead-to-chest gesture at me once, then turned away. "I'll be back before dark," I told my dad, "just so you know." Don't worry. I had to run into town to pick up a prescription for him. Blood pressure. He was getting older, and the stress of hiding what we were hiding didn't help. I remember his hand on the doorframe as I left. "You get a bad feeling, Em, you come home. You don't stick around." "I know," I said. "I'll be fine." When I came back 2 hours later, the yard was wrong. You live in a place long enough, you know what it's supposed to feel like. The way the air sits, the sounds you hear, the patterns of light on the ground. That evening, everything felt shifted half an inch out of place. The truck wasn't in the drive. My dad had taken it to check on a neighbor earlier. There were no lights on in the cabin. That wasn't unusual, but it didn't help. I called out. No answer. My chest felt tight. I went inside, groceries still in my arms. The door fought me a little, like something had swollen the frame. I put the bags down on the counter, and that's when I saw the blood. Not a lot at first. Just a smear low on the door jamb, like someone big had bumped into it on the way in. A few drops on the floorboards, spaced out like they'd fallen off fingertips. My heart started hammering. "Dad," I called, louder. "Are you here?" "In here," he answered, voice strained. I followed it to the kitchen and stopped dead in the doorway. He was at the table. The trauma bag was open, instruments laid out, gauze, saline, suture kit. His hands were deep in fur and blood up to the wrists. The boy, no, the man he'd become, was half sprawled across the chairs, his lower body on one, his upper body on another. His breath sounded like it was coming through a wet cloth. Blood soaked the towel under his leg and pooled on the floor. My dad looked up at me. His eyes were hard in a way I'd only seen when he was working on someone bad off. "Close the door," he said. "Lock it. Then get me more towels." I moved on autopilot, locked the door, pulled towels from the drawer. My fingers fumbled on the cabinet handle. I could feel his eyes on me, but when I looked at him, he wasn't there anymore. He was somewhere else. In the back of an ambulance. On the floor of someone's house. Wherever those old calls took him. What happened? My voice shook. 2 gunshot wounds, he said. Rifle. One through the thigh, one lodged in the shoulder. Bleeding slowed, but he lost a lot already. I swallowed around a lump. Who? He gave me a look that made the rest of the sentence die in my throat. We both knew who. The man on the chair stirred, tried to lift his head. His eyes found mine, unfocused. He made a little sound, question and apology and defiance all wound up together. "Hey," I said, moving closer. I touched his arm, felt heat under the soaked fur. He was burning up already. "I'm here. It's okay. It's okay. We got you." That was another lie. My dad worked quietly, efficiently. He cut away matted hair around the wounds as best he could without causing more damage. He irrigated the thigh wound, cursing under his breath when the water came out pink and full of little clots. "This one went straight through," he muttered. "Got lucky. Missed the femur. The shoulder, though," he probed gently. The man growled, low in pain, but didn't lash out. He gripped the edge of the table so hard the wood creaked. "I've got to get the bullet out," my dad said. "It's not too deep. If I leave it, infection's worse. God knows what crap was on that thing." He looked at me. "You hold him. Talk to him." My hands felt useless, but I put them on his good shoulder and his forearm, trying to anchor him. His skin was hot under the fur. His breath gusted in my face, thick with the smell of blood and wet animal. "Remember the book?" I whispered. "The one with the red truck?" "You liked that one, remember? And the dog with the big ears. You laughed at that picture." His eyes flicked to mine, glassy. I saw recognition there, like a little light in a fogged-up room. My dad dug for the bullet. He didn't scream. He made this deep, horrible sound that I felt in my teeth. His body arched. The muscles under my hands bunched like cables. The chair legs scraped the floor. "There," my dad grunted. He held something small and ugly up between the forceps. Flattened at one end, streaked with blood. "Got you, you bastard." He didn't throw it away. He didn't even drop it on the tray. He reached for a small metal tin he kept for odds and ends, screws, nails, things like that. He popped the lid with his thumb, dropped the bullet in and snapped it shut. Even then, some part of him was collecting evidence. He finished cleaning and dressing the wounds. He started an antibiotic we had in the fridge from a dog we'd had years back. It was all we had. While we argued in hoarse whispers about calling for help. Who exactly do you call when a creature everyone says doesn't exist is bleeding out at your kitchen table? Our patient moved. He pushed my hands off gently, sat up with a grunt that sounded like it cost him. Blood soaked his fur in stiff, drying patches. His eyes looked clear but tired. Old, in a way. He swung his feet to the floor and stood. Wobbled, caught himself on the table. My dad stepped forward, hands out like you'd approach someone drunk or concussed. "Easy," he said. "You need to lie down." The man shook his head once. Then he turned and saw the stack of paper on the counter. Same cheap white printer paper we'd always used for his drawing. He walked to it. Each step left a little smear of red on the floor. He grabbed a sheet. Then another. 2 pages. They fluttered onto the table. He dipped his fingers in the blood still seeping down his thigh, like ink. Then he started to write. I didn't move. My dad didn't either. We watched, suddenly feeling like intruders in our own kitchen. His fingers were clumsy, shaking, but the letters came out big and clear. First an I, then a space, then R, then V, then N, then G, then G. He stared at it for a second, breathing hard. Then he looked up at me. He didn't know the spelling. He knew the shape of the word from my books, from the newspaper headlines he'd studied over my shoulder. Revenge. But he'd never had a reason to write it until now. He pressed his hand to his forehead, then to his chest. Forehead, chest, the gesture his mother had made when she shoved him into the bushes as men with guns came through the trees. I understood what he was telling me. I don't know how I didn't collapse under the weight of it. You wanted to be safe, he was saying. You promised. You taught me what you could. You gave me words. I used them. I got them. He swayed. My dad grabbed his elbow to steady him. For a second, the three of us stood there in that tiny kitchen, the world held together by nothing but tape and willpower. Then he sagged. We got him to the bedroom, onto my mattress. We stripped off as much of the dried, stiff fur as he'd let us. Cleaned what we could. Started him on a rotation of antibiotics and painkillers. I didn't sleep that night. Every time his breath hitched, my heart slammed against my ribs. Outside, somewhere in the woods, a man with a scar on his chin was running through the dark, screaming about a monster that stood like a man. The official story, when it finally came out, was a bear. 2 hunters killed by wildlife up near the old cave system. One survivor found days later, dehydrated and half out of his mind, clothes torn, rambling about a creature nobody believed in. Sheriff's report mentioned alcohol. Local news did a short piece about the dangers of the backcountry and respecting nature. I watched it once on my laptop, volume low, while my dad slept in the chair by the bedroom door and our patient dozed fitfully on my bed. They showed the truck I'd seen in town, tarp over the open back, evidence markers. A shot of the cave entrance, hung with police tape that looked ridiculous there. The sheriff standing in front of it, hat in his hands, talking about a tragic accident we believe was caused by a large bear. They didn't show the bodies. They didn't talk about blunt force trauma, about one man's broken spine from being slammed into a rock, about another's skull shattered at the bottom of a ravine. They didn't mention the footprints someone must have seen but decided not to take casts of. People see what they can live with. That line from my dad came back to me then. The surviving hunter went to the hospital, then for evaluation. Last I heard, he never really left the psychiatric side. My friend who worked at the front desk of the hospital once told me, quietly, that there was a guy in there who drew Bigfoot over and over. Hairy figures, too tall, eyes hollow. He'd tell anyone who'd listen that it wasn't a bear. They wrote paranoid delusions in his chart. I'm not sure he deserved better. I'm not sure he didn't. That's the problem with stories like this. There aren't good guys and bad guys, just people who did things they can't take back. While all that was happening out there, in here we were fighting our own losing battle. At first it seemed like he would pull through. The bleeding slowed, his temperature came down a little. The wound in his leg started to look less angry. He could sit up and drink water on his own. He even got up once and stood by the window, peeking between the curtain and the frame to look at the trees. We might actually do this, my dad said one morning, rubbing his eyes. If infection doesn't hit too hard, if he keeps eating, he's tougher than any human I've patched up. I let myself believe it. I started thinking about the next step. How we'd keep him hidden while the police wandered around the woods. How we'd stop him from going back to the cave, to the place where his parents had died, and now 2 men had too. I never got that far. It was little things at first. He slept more. He stopped showing interest in food. His breath started to smell sweet and wrong. The skin around the shoulder wound, under the fur, felt hot as a stove. My dad upped the antibiotics, split his own pills to adjust the dose. We cleaned the wounds twice a day, even when he growled and flinched. We did everything you would do for a person in his situation. It didn't matter. Whatever bacteria rode in on that bullet, or lived on our floors, or in our air, it hit his system like a freight train. His body had never seen human germs before. No immunity, nothing to fight with. The fever came back hard. He shook with chills that rattled the bed frame. Fur fell out around the wounds in ragged patches. His eyes went glassy. He started muttering words from books he'd memorized, kids' stories and headlines and my own conversations, all jumbled together. Sometimes he'd latch on to a single sentence and repeat it for hours. Once, deep in the night, he said, "You're safe here, I promise," in my own voice, over and over, until I had to leave the room and cry in the hallway. Another time he whispered, "Bear attack, tragic accident, respect nature," in the flat tone of the news anchor. He would make the forehead-to-chest gesture even when he was too weak to lift his arms properly, hands shaking, barely clearing the blanket. Forehead, chest, forehead, chest. I sat with him, read aloud from the same old books I'd used when he was little. Even when his eyes were closed, his lips moved, forming the words he already knew by heart. His mouth looked dry and cracked. My dad did what he could. Fluids, meds, cooling cloths. I caught him once, standing in the bathroom, gripping the sink so hard his knuckles went white. "I've lost people before," he said without looking at me. "I've watched them die on dirty floors and in alleys and on their own kitchen tiles. But this," he shook his head, "I can't even tell anyone what I'm missing." "You're not going to lose him," I said, "because people say stupid, hopeful things when they don't know what else to do." He didn't argue. He just turned the faucet on and let the water run over his hands. 2 or 3 weeks after the confrontation, I'd stopped keeping exact track, days blurred together. He stopped talking. His breath got shallow, each inhale a little shorter than the last. The room smelled like sickness, that heavy, sour smell that clings to walls. It was a gray morning. Clouds low, no bird song, the kind of day where the world feels muted. I was sitting by the bed, holding his hand. It dwarfed mine even then, even wasted. His pulse fluttered under the skin, fast and weak. He opened his eyes once, just once. He looked at me, really looked, like he was there for a brief second. Then he lifted his hand a little. It trembled in the air. He touched his forehead with the back of his fingers. Then his chest, then his hand fell. That was it. No last roar. No dramatic line. Just a broken, wet breath that didn't quite finish, and then silence. I sat there with my hand around his, counting the seconds, waiting for another rise of his chest that didn't come. My dad stood in the doorway. I heard his breath catch just once. We didn't call anybody. Who would we have called? We buried him before dawn. We wrapped his body in old blankets, the ones he'd used in the forest when we first started visiting him. It took both of us and the truck to get him out of the cabin. He was heavy even in death. We avoided the trails anyone else used. We knew where the game cameras were, where the hunters liked to set up. Years of living there had taught us those patterns. We took him back toward the cave, not to the mouth too obvious, but to a mossy rise not far from where we thought his parents had died years before, pushing him into the brush. The ground was soft under the moss. The shovel went in easy. My arms ached. My breath plumed in little clouds in the cold air. My fingers went numb, then burned. We didn't say any formal words. No prayers. It felt wrong, putting human rituals on someone who had never been part of that world. Before we rolled his wrapped body into the grave, I went back to the truck and got 3 things. The first t-shirt he'd ever worn. It had been a joke gift at first, something I'd brought back from the thrift store with a picture of some cartoon animal on it. He'd hated the feel of it until he got used to the idea of clothes. After that, he'd kept it folded next to his corner of the room, one of the children's books he'd memorized cover to cover, and the 2 sheets of paper, folded up tight, the ones with the dried, rusty letters on them. I didn't read them again. I didn't need to. I saw them every time I closed my eyes anyway. I put them on his chest, tucked the book by his side, laid the t-shirt over his hands. My dad watched, eyes tired and hollow. He didn't say anything. He just put one hand on my shoulder. We covered him. Moss went back over the disturbed earth. From a distance, it looked like any other rise in the forest. Just another bump in a sea of green. As we stood there, I thought I heard something. Not a voice. Not clear, just a rustle that wasn't wind, a shift in the silence. I looked toward the cave. The mouth gaped dark and stupid under the roots and ferns. Police tape hung askew from a branch, already starting to sag. The world doesn't mark places for what really happened there. It just covers them up. Moss, leaf litter, official stories. On the way back, my dad slid the tin with the bullets into a hollow in the wall, behind a loose board. He sealed it back up. We never spoke about where it was. We told ourselves we were done. We weren't, though. Not really. Because you don't walk away from something like that, you just carry it in your head. Forehead, chest, forehead, chest. So that's the story. 2 men are dead because of someone I helped raise in secret in the woods. A third is living in a place with locked doors and fluorescent lights, drawing the thing that killed his friends, and nobody believes him. The official report says, bear attack. The town goes quiet when you bring it up. People look at the floor and mumble things about back then and crazy old so-and-so. My dad is gone now. Heart finally gave out one winter while he was splitting wood. Sometimes I think he was relieved. He carried that kitchen scene with him like a weight. Me, I'm still here, still in the same cabin, for now. Different curtains, different stove, same walls. Some nights I sit at the table and swear I can see his shape in the corner of my eye, hunched over paper, lips moving as he reads silently. I don't tell this story for fun. I don't care if it gets me famous. I'm not trying to convince anyone that Bigfoot is real so they'll go tromping around in the woods with cameras and guns. I tell it because there's a man in a hospital somewhere who wakes up screaming about a monster that stood like a man, and everybody writes it off. And because there's a grave in the forest that nobody knows about but me, under moss and ferns, with a t-shirt and a children's book and 2 pages marked with dried blood. When people ask me if I'm sure, if I'm absolutely sure I didn't just make him up, I tell them this. I can still feel the heat of his hand when he pressed it to my forehead, and then to my chest that last time. I can still hear the wet drag of his breath on the pillow. I can still smell the mix of wood smoke and rain and fur and that sharp metal tang as his fingers traced those letters on my kitchen table. I-R-V-Dean. Not good grammar, not even a full word. But I knew what he meant. Revenge is not clean. It's not smart or noble. It's a wounded kid hiding in a bush watching his parents die. It's a young woman thinking she's doing the right thing and creating something she can't control. It's a half-remembered whistle in a parking lot years later that flips a switch you didn't know was still wired. You can call what I'm saying a story. You can say it's just trauma reframed as a monster tale. Maybe that's easier to live with. All I know is, sometimes at night, when the fog comes in low and the trees drip long after the rain stops, I hear something move on the ridge near the cave. Not him. He's gone. I buried him myself. But something. The forest doesn't forget. Not the way we do. Remember, carry it. Because whether you believe me or not, I have to live in the same world where it happened.